When you're involved in real estate photography, editing plays a huge part in the process of creating great photos that agents want to use to market their new properties that they are selling. And a good agent will really value good quality photography because they know how important it is to the sale price of that house. But how do you edit real estate photos? I'm going to jump into Lightroom on my MacBook in just a second, but there's a couple of things to know before we get to that editing stage. Firstly, with all the photos that we take when we are shooting houses, we take 3 exposures each time. So every time we take a photo, we take a photo for the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights. And what that means is we have 3 photos that we can then merge together inside Lightroom, and we have more than enough data to be able to create a great looking image. The second is that we have our camera set up the same every single time with every shot we take. So we always shoot at ISO 100 at f11, and the only thing changing is the shutter speed. And that means not only are all our photos nice and sharp from shooting at f11, it also means they are noise free from shooting at a low ISO of 100. If you start to shoot at higher ISOs, then you get noise and grain included in your image. That's something we want to avoid, so we shoot at ISO 100. But it also means that all our photos are going to match across the whole set of photos from that house, because you don't want different rooms potentially not matching other rooms. You want all of your photos to look uniform and the same. Now, we will be making a whole video on how to shoot real estate photos, so don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Here we are inside of Adobe Lightroom, and this is what we use to edit all of our real estate photos. You can see I've already imported a few example photos just to show what we're on about. And here you can see exactly what I'm on about when I take 3 exposures of each photo. So here we have a nice shot of a big open plan hall space. And if I scroll along, we have 3 shots of this. So we have one for the midtones, one for the shadows, and one for the highlights. So what we want to do is select these 3 photos, and then I'm going to right click and click photo merge, HDR merge, and then Lightroom will work its magic and come up with a preview, and then we are going to click merge. If you've taken your shots correctly and not moved your camera at all, Lightroom won't have a problem. If your camera has moved between shots, you will have a problem merging shots. But again, we'll go into that in our real estate shooting video. And then once you have your HDR image, you can then get on with editing your photo. And we have created our own presets that we've created over the years of shooting real estate photography that work for us and our clients. So I'm just going to go into presets and hit Stories Internal, which is our preset for all our internal wides. And you can see the difference that's made already. If I turn it off, it's just helped raise some of the shadows a little bit and bring a bit more detail back into the image. But we're always going to be looking at this histogram when we're editing our photos. And what we tend to do is lift the exposure until we're around about 3/4 of the way to the right. We've noticed that people like to see really bright images. They don't want to see dark, dingy images because that doesn't help to sell a house. By making it look spacious and airy, that is what agents are usually after with their photos. We also then reduce our contrast quite a lot. We reduce the highlights because we want to keep the detail in the highlights. If we look outside, for example, we don't want anything too bright because it starts to clip. So we're going to reduce them. We raise our shadows a little bit and drop our whites because that has the same effect as the highlights, and then we will also drop our blacks a little bit. And for the exposure, that's what we will stick with, and most of that is included in our preset. We just have to raise the exposure. So creating your own presets really helps to speed up the editing process, especially when you have maybe 30-40 photos to edit per house. As we scroll down, we will come to the color and temperature, and the main one that we tend to control is the temperature. As we shoot all of the houses with the lights on, the lighting can affect how the photo comes out in the end. So what we usually have to do is warm it up or cool it down. A lot of houses do tend to have quite tungsten lighting, so we do have to cool it down quite a lot. But what we're trying to do here is match up the red, the green, and the blue lines in the histogram. What you can do to save a little bit of time if you want to is click on this little eyedropper tool, and then if you select something that's white in the image, and it has to be white, that will then automatically correct the white balance to that shot. And if you click on a different color, for example, it will change it the wrong way. So you have to click on something white to be able to get the right white balance. But that's a bit of a time saving tool if you want to use that. It's very, very useful. And then as we continue, this is where we want to bring a bit of detail into our image. So we do go quite extreme on the clarity, but we've noticed that this is something that agents like because they want to show as much detail in the image as possible while still keeping it nice and bright and airy. And because we reduced our contrast up here, we increased the texture and the clarity quite a lot. So that's what it looks like without any clarity. And then we bring the detail back in with a bit of texture and clarity. We might maybe reduce it just a little bit sometimes, but I think around about there for this shot works. And that is, for the edit, the color and everything, that is everything that we need to do. The one final thing that we do when we are always editing real estate photographies is we check our verticals, our horizontals in our geometry section. So if our lines were off, for example, and let me just crop that up there so I can make the example. That doesn't really look very good. It looks like it's slanted, and it is. So if you have taken your photo at a slight angle when your camera's been on your tripod, you can easily correct this with these sliders here. And the two I tend to use the most are the vertical and the horizontal. You might occasionally need to rotate it a little bit, but usually it's just the verticals and the horizontals. And you want to do that until all of your lines are straight. So I usually try and use a door frame, and the same with the horizontals. So you can see here, we have a line in the tiles along the floor. We just want to check our horizontals are straight, and they are pretty much bang on in this photo. And that then is the finished photo. The one final thing that I might do to this photo potentially is, you can see in this window here and this window here, the highlights are still just a little bit bright. So I might get the brush tool, reduce the size and the flow. We don't want it to be too extreme. And then just paint over this window and this window, and then just reduce the highlights and the whites, maybe the exposure just a little bit, just so we can get the detail back in those windows. You can see if we turn it on and off, it's only subtle, but it makes a big difference. It's less distracting. So that's sometimes quite a nice thing to go and do if you need to. If you're shooting on a bright sunny day, for example, you might need to do that quite a lot. Have a look at another photo. We'll go and have a look at this outside photo. This is a nice house we shot a few months ago, back when it was sunny and warm in the summer. So I'm going to highlight all of these photos and click Photo Merge, HDR Merge. Again, I'm going to go into presets. We have a slightly different preset for outdoor photos. So I'm going to click Stories Outdoor. With outside shots, you do find your exposure tends to look about right more often than not. It's usually the inside shots where you need to increase the exposure. Just reduce our contrast on this one a little bit between our shadows and our highlights, and same with our clarity. I'm just going to reduce that slightly like I did with the inside shot. And maybe the dehaze, and I think around about there looks really nice. I think that looks like a nice natural photo, and if we turn that on and off, you can see the difference that merging those shadow, midtone and highlight photos has really made. That just stands out so much more. That is why editing your photos is so important. It makes such a difference, and agents love it because they can then show potential buyers these photos and it just looks amazing to them, and it just gets them interested in the house so much quicker. So we'll just do one more. We'll go over to this one of this amazing kitchen. There is a shortcut for merging photos if you want to use that, and you click Control and H if you are on a Mac, and that will automatically, once you have selected them, merge the photos. Just gonna lift that up to around about there, so we're 3/4 of the way up the histogram, and just raise the temperature, bring back in a bit more warmth into the photo. Click on the little eyedropper tool, select something white, and that does the same job for you. Looks great, but as you can see, the highlights are very, very bright. We had bright sunshine on this day, so I'm going to go over to my masking tool, click brush. I'm going to increase the brush size nice and big because we don't want it to look too blotchy, and I'm just going to brush over all of these highlights. So over that big wide open window and in the floor here as well. Just going to drop the exposure, the highlights and the whites, and you can see we're getting all of that detail back into the photo. And if we turn that on and off, that mask, you can see the difference that has made. Again, only subtle, but it makes it a little less distracting. We're going to go back to our geometry tool just to finish off. So we have our verticals, and I'm using this cupboard here just to check my verticals. Did move it slightly, so I'm just going to crop off that little bottom part where we've moved the photo with our geometry tool. And that there is the finished photo. And if we click on this little button in the corner here, we can see the original and see just how far the photo has come and the difference it has made adding those edits to the photo. It makes a huge difference, not only to how your photos look, but it also makes a huge difference to your clients and also the potential buyers of the property as well, because they can imagine themselves living in it. And that is exactly what we are trying to do with these photos, is put them in front of people that want to imagine themselves living in that house. And we want to make it look as bright and open and as spacious as we possibly can. So that is editing real estate photos. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos, and we shall see you very soon in the next video.